I want to ask you.
And you'd say Britain is, but the king's a mockery.
No, the U.S. is.
So I want to ask you, Jimmy. There's a conspiracy theory that powerful interests around the world are manufacturing the end of days to force the return of Jesus. Have you ever heard this?
I have not.
That the idea is they're trying to implement the things described in the Bible so that they make the prophecy come true intentionally.
That gives me chills.
Yeah.
That's one of the like if you talk to people that really hate Christians and they want to call people Nazis and stuff, tend to be on the left. They say that Christians and Republicans and stuff, they are pro-Israel because they want to kick the Jews out. The whole reason that Christians are pro-Israel is because they want to get rid of the Jews and they need to have a place where they can send the Jews. Yeah. That's what the left thinks of. That's what they say, because everything to them boils down to, if you're not us, you're a Nazi.
But so the general idea is
it's true.
All of these things that we're seeing with terms of the Great Reset, you will own nothing, you'll be happy, the mark of the beast, like the way the internet is making people, as you described in that, when you read that Bible quote, is being done by plan. That's the conspiracy theory.
All right, and real quick, when you say mark of the beast, I have another verse. It says that if you will not be able to trade in the marketplace unless you take the mark of the beast. Are you familiar with this? So I'm like,
that's the mark of the beast.
CBDC. I'm like, oh my god, right? It's like, is that not what it would be? Because like you're going to pay with this digital currency.
Everyone will have to have the app to scan. Otherwise, you can't buy, sell, or trade.
And this is totally coming. Like, is it? Does anyone here at this table suspect that that's not happening? Isn't this exactly what they are saying?
Yeah, that is, I think,
Who
central
is they,
currency.
Who is
they, though? It's the World Economic Forum, which loves you. And by the way, there's no evidence they don't love you. There is no evidence. There's no evidence Bill Gates doesn't love you. There's no evidence Klaus Schwab doesn't love you. There is no evidence. You know, I'm quoting, like, there's no evidence, there is no evidence. Like with the elections and stuff, just keep saying it. There's no evidence, there's no evidence.
I love how Bill Gates is constantly going like, there's just too many humans and we got to do something about it and make less of them.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, that's a conspiracy theory. It's like dudes on stage at TED saying it.
Giggling about it. Giggling.
You mentioned psychedelics might help people overcome this pattern and create a new pattern. I found that does help me personally create new patterns in my own thought processes. But like, it's something about when you said like ego death that made me think about flow state and this state that scientists have been studying fervently in recent times, where you quiet your frontal lobe, which is where your ego, your personality, your thoughts of me, I, it's in your frontal lobe. When you cool that down and don't have activity up there, you go into this flow state. Where, and if you're creative, you understand flow state. Probably you've probably experienced it at some point in your life. I'm sure of it. And when you're in that state, you kind of have not control of reality, but you control it in a different way. You interact with reality in a way where you're not like, it's not happening around you. You are it.
Right. I'm convinced that this is like when people say, like, they debate about choice, like what's his face? What's that guy that talks about free will? What's his name? He's made a big case for it. Joe Rogan
Dawkins?
Talks about, no. You see him around on the internet all the time. People look in the comments, talk about the guy who talks about free will. You'll know his name.
Sam Harris.
Bingo. Yeah. Sam Harris. And I'm like, this is what debunks that. I don't believe that for a second. In fact, I think that it's extremely dangerous to make people think they don't have a choice. That's a lie. That's the devil. You always have a choice. But the thing is that I totally understand his argument that if you're born in a certain situation and raised a certain way, you can react with the reptilian brain so quickly where it's like you kind of didn't have a choice. But what you just described, I believe, is the way around that, which is that to take an objective step back and with that mitigating ego, now you realize you do have a choice and you don't have to act impulsively and you can actually choose to think. I think that telling people they don't have a choice is one of the most dangerous things. I think it's the big scam.
Yeah, talking about free will, and I guess you would say what's free will and determinism, I think is the two opposites. Well, I think that there is a form of determinism in that we're in this magnetic field being moved along magnetically with God, and they say, are you with God? Because you're moving with it. But then you have the free will to bend away from that and kind of step away from God's plan and create your own will and your own plan. And sometimes that can actually get God to go along with you and the rest of humanity to kind of change course a little bit, and you've kind of recalibrated determinism for the entire species or all of reality.
I got to push back on the magnetism portion of it, because if you were to say like the ether or something, or this like intrinsic field or something, that might resonate more.
Yeah, subatomic spin.
But what you're saying is physics buzzwords to represent something that we can't understand.
Then I'll stop using the word magnetism. It's too big. Magnetism's too big. It's a much smaller process.
What about gravity?
No,
which I think is a form of magnetism.
My issue with this is like we of small and limited mind have identified one fundamental force, therefore we will describe God as that. And that's like, that's just, I think, a bad idea. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's more about the way the universe moves.
Give it its own word if you have to. This like
spin?
Unknowing. No, because spin is also a very quantifiable and tangible thing that we can study and replicate.
A lot of the times,
if you're trying to say that there's some kind of God field that unites and bonds people to God, and it's beyond our understanding, then I'm like, right. Some kind of field of energy,
like the Higgs field.
No,
field
you're
of
doing it again.
bosons.
You're doing it again. You're doing it again. You're doing it again.
You're never going to be able to see it because it's always going to be smaller than what you can currently see.
But it's not size. The point that he's making is these are all phenomena. You talk about phenomenon that we can study and that we're familiar with. You talk about vibrations a lot. Vibrations are kinetic energy. We understand kinetic energy. You talk about electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is one of the four fundamental forces of the universe. We understand that pretty well. The thing we don't really understand is gravity. So fair enough, we don't know where gravity comes from. But the strong force, the weak, but it's
space-time.
It's less understood than the strong force and
it's
the weak.
It's a pushing force, essentially.
It's not. It's
gravity's a pushing force. It's not pulling.
It bends space. It's not a pushing force.
It is pushing. Yeah, you're being pushed towards Earth. Which is
no. He's right. He's right.
You're traveling through a straight line through space, through curved space. Space itself is bent by massive objects. So that's why like a black hole, you can't get out because the curvature of space is so much that you can't travel fast enough to get out of it. The speed of light is faster or is slower than the speed you need to go to get out of that curvature. Mass makes the field that we exist in, the three dimensions, up, down, left, right, forward, back. Mass makes the field we exist in curve, it bend. That's what gravity is. But the strong force, the force that keeps subatomic particles together, the weak force, and the electromagnetic force, these are things that we understand really well. So if you're talking about a new force or a force that's unrelated to these, that's fine. But when you use forces that we can study and that have been studied for decades and decades and decades and stuff, you tend to miss you're not making the connection that you're trying to make. You know what I mean? Because you're using things that we can relate to already, that we have experience with and can test and stuff like that. Is I think what Tim's trying to say.
Yeah, but basically it's like, imagine if an indigenous tribe of people were like, the sun is God and we're all connected by the warmth of the sun. It's like, we know that's not true. We know the sunlight is an electromagnetic frequency that is coming from this gigantic fusion reaction. And so if you're trying to say that there is an energy, a spiritual energy we don't understand, call it that. But saying magnetism is like me saying this clicker remote control is what connects us to God. It's like, no, that's one small thing we've identified.
Maybe it's like the way, see this word again, vibration. We don't have the tools to measure this stuff, but something's cracking, like photons are appearing out of the
every time you say vibration or Higgs or whatever, all you're doing is like picking up a rock that we found and claiming that's God.
All I can do is talk about bosons and fermions, the subatomic spin right now. We don't have the tools to see smaller than that.
But do you? So you can talk about them, but do you know why you're talking about them?
Because
do you know what? Do you understand the things that you're talking about?
The way they're spinning is determining whether or not they become protons or neutrons or electrons, and it also determines where they're going to appear in reality. And like when we look at reality, we think of it as moving across, but it's actually appearing in place. Appearing in place consistently in a new position over and over and over again. You're not actually moving. You're appearing. You're constantly appearing in place in a new position. So. I think you can appear. You can change the way you appear.
I don't.
And more than just positionally, like the way is a vague term. I don't.
Do you want to hear a mind F to go along with talking about the sun and God real quick? And we're talking about all this the subatomic particles. So something like 94% or it could be 96% of all elements in existence emit from the sun. Give that a Google.
Mm-hmm. Wait.
Say that one time. Come from the sun.
Something like over 90%, like 94% is what I recall. Of all elements in existence emit from the sun.
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah. But you've got to clarify what that means. You mean that
it is stardust? We are made
right.
Stardust.
Fusion reactions within stars create elements.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Not the sun. The sun is a microscopic component of reality.
The sun is one of many generators that are producing up to 94% of all matter.
Apparently, all matter that exists is constantly being emitted from suns and exploded supernovas around the cosmos.
But there's 6% of it that's not coming from stars.
that might not even be the case. Maybe it is, and they don't realize it. But I know that these elements also come from deep sea heat vents. You know what I'm talking about, like superheated vents. They're finding that the building blocks of life are being emitted from that, which is unbelievable because we're talking about superheated, we're talking about molten rock. It's being emitted out of that. So like when you think about the fact that we are quite literally made of stardust by definition, and the fact that we're now sitting here talking about it is one of the biggest mind F's for me, because I'm like, what is this kind of creation? To me, that's evidence of intelligent design. And not everyone listening is going to like that, but I'm like, that's kind of weird. The fact that I can conscientiously choose to even discuss it and talk about it and present it is like the biggest that one really gets me.
Here's the sad reality around creationism, intelligent design, whether it's secular, simulation, or religious. You know, when you play a video game, the video game might have stars in the sky, but there ain't nothing up there. It's just a picture. And if we are in a simulation, if we are in a created universe for our experience, then space is just pictures. Ain't nothing up there. It's all down here, and we're all alone. Just us, here for ourselves.
Or at least that's all we can observe. Like I like to use the analogy of like an ant. Like so ants are very sophisticated, and you drive by hundreds or thousands of anthills every day, and they have absolutely no concept whatsoever that there is somebody inside, or even of a vehicle itself, but somebody's in it going from to their job. It's like beyond their even realm of comprehension. So maybe that's like this for us humans.
Comprehension,
right?
For sure, our brains are so limited relative to potential.
So this is great. This is one of the answers to Fermi's paradox. For those that aren't familiar, I assume most of you are. It's if the universe is so big and aliens exist, why have we not discovered intelligent alien life? It could be that we are ants next to a superhighway that we can't comprehend, and we look up at the stars going, wow, I wonder what that does. Meanwhile, super advanced species, which are well beyond human comprehension, are zipping around multiple different dimensions and times, and just like, they don't care about us in much the same way that we don't care about ants.
Yeah. I realized I actually tweeted this out, when we master the communication we can't hear, the aliens will come. What does that mean? Body language. When you can communicate with your thoughts, once the human race masters that ability, I think.
Telepathy?
Yeah. Just think words at people instead of saying them. You communicate with your body language that way.
Do that right now to me and then see if I can get it.
This is how you do it.
Nothing, man. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm trying. I don't know.
But what happens when you think of somebody and they call? You guys have had some pretty spectacular synchronicities.
We've all had those moments where you grab your phone and then right when you press like wake up, you answer the phone call at the exact moment, and it's the person you wanted to call.
Isn't that wild, right? What is that? Is it just coincidence?
Look,
no, I don't think.
Hold on. Back in the day when we had landlines, this happened to me maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. I walk up to my phone to call my friend. I pick the phone up, and there's no dial tone. And I'm like, what's going on? Then I hear some noise like, hello? And then my friend goes, hello? And then I'm like, who it? Rick? And he's like, oh yeah, I just called. Oh, wow, I just called you. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what?
Jaw dropping.
I picked up the phone to call you right when he dialed the number, and on his end, it never rang. He dialed the number, and I was instantly there on the phone, and he's like, huh? And for me, I picked my phone up and he's already on the phone. I'm like, what just happened?
And the crazy ones is when it's somebody you hadn't talked to in a long time. Maybe it's months, maybe it's a couple years, and all of a sudden, like you get like an email or you get like a DM or a phone call or a text. Like, what's that about? What are the odds? Sometimes I wonder, like I've had these moments where I'm like, this goes beyond the realm of like coincidence. And sometimes it's on a day where something had happened that reminded me of them, or I heard that song, because like songs are an interesting way of taking you back in time. Like I could hear a song on the radio and be like, oh, I was in the 7th grade. I remember this because I was doing this with these buddies. You know what I'm talking about? And so I'm like, sometimes when things happen like that, it makes me like a believer. I'm like, I don't know how we're all connected, if whether it's one consciousness or what, but sometimes I think like there's way more going on beyond the veil of the human eyes.
Have you read about near-death experiences?
Yeah.
I've read this book a long time ago, like 20 years ago now, or like 18 years ago. And it was people said a lot of the same things, like they died, they could see a bright light, they felt warmed, they felt like they were being lifted up. And one book I read said a common theme was they felt like they were being pulled towards this very large ball of light, but they could see other balls coming towards it as well. And I'm wondering, just a thought, are we all small? We are all pieces of the universe, obviously.
Yeah.
But is it possible that the energy and consciousness within us is a fraction of the greater entity of consciousness?
Gnosticism.
And
It has to
when
be.
we die, we go back and rejoin.
Concentric circles.
That's all Gnosticism.
Is that what they think?
Yeah, the Gnostics believe that God is the demiurge. God is actually Satan, and there is a God above God, which is the Gnostic God. They believe that that God has broken itself apart, and it's in every living being and every person. And the goal of people is to realize that we are God, and when we do that, then we will. I forget the phrase. But we will become one with the ultimate, or one with the all.
And what if you don't do that? You like?
I don't know the whole detail. I don't know.
You gotta come back.
It's a religion that I don't know a whole ton about, but I do know that Gnosticism believes that the God that is worshipped, like the Judeo-Christian God and Islamic God, is actually the devil, and that the real God is broken himself apart and is inhabiting all of us. And when we realize that we are God, then we will have that will actually be the beginning of time. Time hasn't started yet.
My religion is that when you die, you wake up in an arcade with your buddies.
Playing Street Fighter 2?
You take off the headset, and you were like, whoa, that was crazy.
Dalzim's awesome, yeah.
And then it's like, you die, and then next thing you know, you're sitting in an arcade, you take the helmet off, and then your buddies are like, dude, you were a rock star in a band called All That Remains. You're like, yeah, it was great.
When you talk about God, this Gnostic God, and how it's within all of us, I'm thinking about how there's theories about how the universe is like white holes and black holes, and that the black holes are sucking matter in, and then it's transporting it or transmitting it, and it's bursting out of these white holes, which are stars. And then I wonder if we have white holes within our protons, or within what's causing the subatomic spin to actually spin. What's gestating that momentum? Is it a white hole? Is it some sort of expulsive force that's being withdrawn through black holes? And is that God coming out of us?
Bro, you ever program a video game?
Yeah. Well, I used Game Maker.
So
way back in the day.
So for a lot of people, I'm not,
RPG Maker.
I'm not. So I'll say two things. One, in video games, what they do now is only what's in your field of view is rendering, and when you move, it rapidly renders the objects around, saves memory, and is easier to process. But when I used to do Game Maker stuff, multimedia fusion, Flash, if you are making a game. Let's say you're like what's it Galaga? Is that where you're like your little spaceship, and then the aliens
come down? Space Invaders Plus. Yeah, that was a big upgrade.
In the future iterations of these games, where your overhead view of the little spaceship, and it's shooting the guns and then getting the power ups, and the bad guys are coming down. What is really happening is that if you were to take the video game screen and zoom out and see beyond what the screen could show you, there are other objects outside of your field of view. Just above your little spaceship is a block with no graphic design object. We can call it Object A. Object A is the creation point where obstacles are descending from, and it moves around, basically creating, not necessarily creating, but the way it worked in the games that at least as the games I made them. If you were playing a game where your platformer running forward, and I would want to generate random enemies and obstacles, there would be an object that moved up and down. And then the code would say something to the effect of you'd create a variable so that it would generate between 1 and 10 seconds, at random, create object 17 at y-1 object A. And what that means is that object that moves around is the point at which the game fires the obstacle, the enemy. So let's say you're playing Mario and a bird comes across the screen. There's something that's in front of you can't see.
Do you think that's happening in reality?
Well, so I bring that up because that's a white hole. The white holes you described it, where matter is coming out of, could just be a spawn point for matter that the simulation or God uses.
I only question if it's random, because we use that word random, but I don't see any evidence that any of this is random. I mean, I can only assume that, like you said, Jimmy, we're talking about this primordial soup. That's not, right. This isn't like, oops, we accidentally fell down and now we're humans talking about it.
And the fact that we have feelings, the fact that it's like talking about like what we do matters, the fact that when you do something wrong, there's this weird feeling about it. And you can talk about what's wrong and that's debatable, but like the fact that there's feeling as well as something called love, we all you can't prove that it exists, but like we all know it, right? Does it not exist? Yeah. What is that about? And let me just say, people say that's like survival, like, oh, well, you need it to like a companion, whatever. I'm like, I don't know. I think that, you could argue that love is almost like it could destroy a lot of people in some ways. I don't know. What were you going to say? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, there's a lot of life on this planet that doesn't have love.
Yeah.
Yeah, trees, as far as we can tell, don't experience the same existence we do. In fact, when I look at a tree, I see essentially the same thing as fire. a chemical reaction. Now, you can make the argument that plants, of course, are not ensouled in the same way as humans are, and humans are ensouled, and that's what creates everything you've described.
I bet they are. They have circulatory systems.
I got to tell you, though, like, you know, Seamus says that there's different kinds of souls, and that idea generally makes sense to me, because there's no way that, you know, when I look at a dog, you can tell a dog's emotions.
Oh, yeah.
You know that dog has not the same, but similar feelings and emotions and expectations. And even, you know, cats. Yeah. Cats are very different. They're more independent. But, like, this is the thing. Like, Roberto Jr. died. He was a rooster we raised, one of the first that we hatched. We got these original chickens. Roberto knocked them up. We didn't realize Roberto was a boy. We take a few of the eggs that are fertilized. We incubate them. They were a weak batch. Only one remains. Kind of sad. But Roberto Jr. has had kids. And I did not shed a tear for Roberto Jr. I am not that upset that he died. It's sad. It's like, oh, Roberto Jr., he was our dude. You know, he's the mascot for our coffee. But roosters don't have that emotional connection or actual, like, mammalian bond or whatever. He's a rooster. He was funny. He looked at me. He you know, that's it.
Right.
Mr. Bocus, our cat, and the other dogs that we have here express love and affection in a way that is relatable and understandable to humans, that humans feel.
I bet if you trip balls on acid with Roberto, you would see his eyes, and you look in his eye for like an hour, and you're just looking in his eyes,
Dude,
and you'd feel it.
I don't agree. They're
wild,
birds.
dude.
Birds are like, they bang their kids.
Even
Like,
insects.
like Roberto's banging his daughters and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't feel any connection to these things. They're food.
Yeah.
You know, I like them. I don't want them to be hurt. It's sad when they die. I don't cry when they do.
It's that
when Bocus gets sick, I get worried, and it hurts my feelings.
It's that brain creature, like the brain stem that's floating in salt water that we all have, even birds. Like
The reptilian brain, right?
Yeah,
The stem.
yeah, it's the brain and the stem. It's all one creature. It looks like an octopus, kind of. Like it fell down into the ocean, living in salt water. And now it's like, surround me with a sticky wet meat sack to contain the salt water, and I'll come out of the ocean and carry the salt water around with me. But we're these like floating octopoid thing, these weird things that are like tugging on muscle with electrical impulses. And we all share that. All the animals have a brain. I think is that safe to say every animal has a brain?
No.
Oh no,
They're like
Jellyfish.
flatworms.
So
Shrimp.
Once you start
shrimp.
Once you start getting into brain creatures, that's like, I don't know if we're different. Like
Whales got big brains.
Yeah, brain creatures is a cool one.
Brain
Octopus.
yeah,
Their
like,
whole body's pretty much a brain.
Yeah,
It's connected to all 8 tentacles.
Yeah.
See, the problem, this interesting thing about alien life, if alien life was, I think if we were ever to discover alien life that was traveling the stars, they would be very similar to us. Very similar. In fact, they'd probably breathe the same atmosphere. Mm-hmm. The reason being, the octopi is a very intelligent creature, super smart, ain't never going to smelt or create computers. Why? It's underwater.
but what if we created a body that it can live inside of in salt water?
No. What do you ask?
Yeah.
Could it manipulate a body's
robot
hand from inside?
A robot.
Like our brains do with our bodies.
So we create a robot with a water tank on top, and the octopus is inside manipulating controls and communicating in a way that it can translate to English, and then we can actually interact with it.
But what you're doing when you say, can we put it into a body, is you're saying, can we take this creature that has no reference of what a human experience is like, right? So we as humans can look at an octopus and understand that thing thinks differently to us, because the experiences that we have have a significant impact on ourselves. So if you took an octopus that has 8 tentacles, no spine, all of these different things that to what we humans are, the way that it experiences reality has to be totally alien to us. So if you put it into a human, like a robot with a human type of body, there's no reason to think that it would understand or even know what to do. And so like the idea of being like, whoa, we'll just take this brain and put it into the robot that we built like it was from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that like, it wouldn't, there's no reason to think that it would understand or see things the way that we do. You know what I mean? The way that we experience in the world is very particular to human beings.
Well, the monkeys, have you seen the monkeys working on computers, like touch screens?
Monkeys are totally different
They're
than
so smart.
But monkeys are totally different than octopus. Monkeys are bipedal. They have hands. They have faces. Octopus are totally different creatures.
I suppose then instead of saying put it in a body, just build an interface for it so that it can somehow let us know.
That assumes that it could interface.
Right. So hold on. Ian, what he's saying is you might you look at food, you think, oh, that piece of cake looks delicious. The octopus might not even think in these terms that we can even understand.
Well, have you seen the octopus in tanks? They'll see another fish in another tank. They want it. They search the tank. They find a crack. They slide up. They move through. They'll even climb out of water and climb across the land.
And everything that it does is like an octopus. The point that I'm making is there's no reference for you to take an octopus, put it into a situation that a human understands, and think that the octopus could understand it. A human being would never look like you could never be in a tank and then be like, oh, there's a crack in there. I should try and shove myself through because you're a human. It doesn't come to you like that. Experience doesn't work.
But sound, for instance,
with AI brute forcing, a computer program could probably. I think we're getting close to the point where an AI could figure out communications between other animals.
Yeah, I see where you're going. And
that's crazy, right?
That's reasonable. That's fine.
So you think about how we have this AI rapidly learning and how it's creating all these images. Imagine if we just had, when we do CAPTCHA, here's the thing. The amount of data we give to AI is insane. We don't have that with, say, a fish or an octopus. We go on dating apps, we go on Twitter, we go on all these apps, and we give our data up that are fed into this machine, this computer, which then rips through all the data and then figures out how to replicate and understand what a human is. Imagine if we made ChatGPT, but it was based on all the sounds a dolphin made. And we just had a bunch of supercomputers running through all the different sounds dolphins make, and then like making the sound and seeing how dolphins react over a long period of time, and then eventually deciphering dolphin communication.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you can actually make a dolphin translator where you can... And dolphins are intelligent.
Yeah, but the thing is,
so you could say like, we're going to throw in some fish if you want to move to the left, and then it goes, and then the dolphins all go left, and then you throw the fish in. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.